we gotta stop. I completely forgot what show we were doing for a second. She's Ann. He's Schneider. I'm Julie. Liz is Barbara. This is One Day at a Time. No, wait, it's not. It's Vikings Report with Drew and Ted.
This is it. This is it. This is life. The one you get.
Drewster, how you doing?
Hey, one day at a time, one day. What about Schneider, dude?
When you think about it, Schneider, the janitor from One Day at a Time, was kind of a creepy guy. None of their stuff ever worked. He was always over there, and nothing ever got fixed.
Before they shot the first episode, they had him in his, he wore that jeans vest.
Yeah.
And he just didn't feel right. So he went over and he took the tool belt off one of the guys working the camera and he put it on, and it just became part of his thing. He just stole
No
the guy's.
kidding.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, Pat Harrington, dude. Yeah, he put the tool belt on. It just became part of the show.
Wow.
He didn't feel like the handyman just walking around looking like, What a great show. It's actually our new episode leader by 2 episodes.
Is it really?
209 episodes, Ted.
Yeah, but those last couple of years, though, like when they
There's
introduced,
only like one person on it.
it just got dumb. Like when it was with Julie, Barbara, and Schneider, the four main characters, that was a great show.
You know what? Bertinelli, I was going to marry her when I was 12.
No, I was. I was 9,
told
and I believe I was.
I remember I was all planning the wedding. I told my ma too. I said, "Ma, I'm gonna marry Barbara Cooper." And she said, "Who's Barbara Cooper? Do you go to school with her?" I'm all, "No, it's Valerie Bertinelli." She says, "Yeah, okay. Set the table, numbskull." The lady that created that show was named Whitney Blake, and she created that show off of her own experience as being a single mom. And I think back in those days, there wasn't a lot of sitcoms or anything done with a divorced mom and her kids. That was one of the first ones.
Very groundbreaking show.
One of her children was Meredith Baxter, who we all know became Elise Keaton on Family Ties in 1982. That was one of Whitney Blake's kids. Great job. Great show, people.
Good show. All right, so now if you'll notice, it's our jersey segment time. Normally we have 2 jerseys hanging behind Drew. Tonight we only have 1. Drew, you just go ahead and take from here. Who's this for?
The greatest Minnesota Viking player of all time, Alan Page.
Ever. Offense, defense, ever. Alan Page.
The guy was born in Canton.
Yes.
That's where he was born. They should have known.
If this is one of your tasty tidbits, I'm sorry if I'm stealing it, but he worked in Canton in high school building when the Hall of Fame was under construction. He literally helped build it, and then I want to say he was a janitor.
What?
After the Hall of Fame was built, he got a job there. So he literally began his career in the Hall of Fame, and his football career ended in the Hall of Fame.
Wait,
yeah.
You talk about bringing the knowledge and bringing the nuggets. That's great, dude. I did not know that. First defensive player to win the MVP in the league, 1971. They said it would never happen. I think it's only happened once since. I do believe I'm guessing on that, but I think Lawrence Taylor won it in '86. And that's
yeah.
it?
I believe you're right. Yes.
But Lawrence Taylor is also a stand-up defensive end.
He was.
So it's a little easier for him to get sacked. What about 1976? Now, they didn't start counting stats of sacks until 1982. So it's really hard to say how many really Deacon Jones had, Jim Marshall. But 1976, Alan Page had 18 sacks, Ted.
As a defensive tackle.
Defensive tackle. Not an end.
No.
Not a linebacker.
Defensive tackle coming up the middle. And he was probably, at the time, he was even small for that area when guys were generally smaller than they are now. He was probably still giving up 20 to 30 pounds to every guy he was going up against.
After he got drafted, it was pretty quick in the NFL that people knew that they had a big problem on their hands trying to block Alan Page because of his quickness, shooting the gap. You know what? Alan Page got held more than any other defensive lineman in NFL history. They allowed the holding. A lot of times the officials allowed the holding, and they said because he can't block them otherwise. It's not fair. If I call the holding, I can't stop. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there was, and speaking of that, I was going to bring this up. This is a perfect segue. There was one game, and I can't remember the year. It was against the Detroit Lions. Yeah. Page kept getting held, and he finally lost his mind on the referee, which was very unusual for Alan Page. Alan Page and the Vikings in general reflected the personality of Bud Grant. So to see a player on the Vikings, especially Alan Page, lose his cool on a referee, was very uncharacteristic. I mean, he just absolutely lost his mind, got flagged for unsportsmanlike conduct, and he took it out the very next 3 plays in a row. He busted through the line and sacked, I believe it was Gary Danielson of the Lions. Enormous loss of yardage. Lions had to punt. Just a tremendous sequence. And that was Alan Page.
And he blocked that punt.
That's right, he did. Yes, he did.
He tackled the running back in the backfield, then got a sack on second down, and then got another sack, and then blocked the punt.
For those of you that didn't get to see Alan Page play in real life, if you go to YouTube and watch his highlights, and it's just, people talk about speed and first step and defensive linemen. Watch Alan Page, and I don't think there was a defensive lineman in NFL history that had got off the ball faster than Alan Page. I mean, there are many times he was in the backfield on a running play, meeting the football about the same time the running back was getting to the ball as well. He was just an amazing player.
It was the combination of that quickness, his length, and the power that he brought with the quickness. Most guys that are quick aren't that strong. They're not as strong as Page was. Page had the ultimate strength and quickness combo, and he was unblockable. That
was
most valuable player year, 1971, when he went, and it wasn't defensive player of the year, NFL MVP, the entire league.
Yes.
109 tackles, 10 sacks, and get this, 3 safeties. When are you going to see a guy get 3 safeties in one season?
I bet it'd be hard for a guy to get 3 safeties in a career these days.
That's off the charts. When it comes to defensive tackles, Alan Page is Wayne Gretzky. And I'm going to tell you, you want to make an Alan Page, you get Aaron Donald, you get Watt, and then you get a couple more guys to throw in the blender. And you want to make one Alan Page.
And they can't weigh more than 235 or 240 pounds.
And they have to play 15 years without missing a game.
Yeah.
Look at that, dude.
Yeah. I
got another one on top of there. He had 108 sacks for the Vikings. Some say that varies because, he didn't count the sack stat. 108, and he played here till 1978. He went to the Bears for 3 more years, Ted, and got 40 more.
Jeez.
40 more sacks to end up with 148 and a half or something, close to 150.
Do you know why he got cut?
He got cut because he started running marathons and lost a bunch of weight, and Bud Grant got upset with him. He was down to 225, and Bud Grant says, you can't play defensive line at 225. You know what? I love Bud Grant. That was a mistake.
That was his, I would argue, other than his in-game decisions at the Super Bowl, that was his biggest player personnel mistake, letting Alan Page go.
He didn't play that very well.
Because you know who was the GM in Chicago when he got picked up by the Bears?
Finks.
Yep, Jim Finks. And a lot of those Bears players that became the 1985 Bears, because Page played until 1982, I believe, with the Bears.
Right.
And a lot of those guys, Buddy Ryan and I want to say it was Mike Singletary, they said, we learned how to play defensive football from Buddy Ryan and from Alan Page. So Alan Page, in some ways, is credited with helping form the attitude of that incredible defense the Bears had in the 1980s. We did, when I was still writing for the Daily Norseman, one of our off-season stories was we did a writers or commenters based could vote who was the greatest Viking. We had a big tournament, kind of in line with March Madness and all that. And Alan Page was voted the greatest Minnesota Viking of all time, which I think is very well deserved.
I would put my vote right in there with that. Alan Page and Fran Tarkinen.
Yep.
One on each side of the ball, but.
By the way, during the offseason, Alan Page went to law school. And by the way, we talked about that.
Yeah.
By the way, after he retired, he became a lawyer. And by the way, after that, he just managed to become a Supreme Court justice in the Minnesota Supreme Court. Are you kidding me? Like, what an underachiever. Go to the Hall of Fame and then just become a Supreme Court justice for the state of Minnesota.
Come on, Alan.
The thing is, Bob, it's not that I'm lazy. It's that I just don't care.
Pick up the pace a little bit. Do something with your life.
Just a tremendous civil rights advocate, quality human being all the way around. Nothing but absolute respect for Alan Page, both on and off the field. All right, so Alan Page, that pretty much wraps up our jersey tribute. Again, don't forget for our jersey contest, April 29th, the night of our live draft show, we're giving away, unfortunately, it's not an Alan Page jersey, but it is a Justin Jefferson jersey, probably the brightest young Vikings player that we have right now on the roster. Most exciting, talented guy. To enter to win, it's very simple. All you got to do is listen or watch for the secret phrase of the show when you see the caption on the YouTube on our episode, just type it into the YouTube comments down below. You can only enter one time per episode, but you can enter every episode up to the last episode prior to the draft night. So we've got several people, about 10, 15 folks that have entered in every single episode. Unfortunately, you can't go back. The registration closes for that episode Wednesday at noon Central Time. But if you haven't gotten in on it yet, start now. The more times you enter, the better your chances to win. We're also going to have the lovely and irrepressible Toonses. Toonses, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing good. I'm super happy. We have trivia back this week.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry we had to preempt you last week, but we had some kind of breaking news.
Yeah, that was awesome. I was super happy about that too. Hey, wait, hold on. Hold on a second, guys.
All right. So we had to take a break because Drew's mustache wasn't properly trimmed, and Ruby we had to pause it so he could go shave it, and it like would have been so distracting we would think about the mole from Austin Powers. We'd been laughing like morons.
Your chair, Dr. Evil.
Thank you.
I know it's kind of a shock to everybody out there, but I don't really take care of my beard and mustache. I don't really care about the trimming of the mustache that way. And I had a little fang going here during the gym.
Oh, God. Oh.
Kind of better now.
Thank God one of us is.
I'm feeling much better now.
There's not a whole lot of Vikings news going on.
There's probably not a whole lot of people watching the show anymore either.
They probably tuned out. Yeah,
I think we killed everybody.
That's fine. I don't care.
For the 9 people out there, let's update them.
So the only thing that's really hit since Saturday when we were last on, is the Vikings just announced they officially restructured the contract of Anthony Barr.
Okay.
His cap number drops to $6.1 million for 2021, gives the Vikings about $10 to $11 million in cap space, depending on what math you use. He has voidable years in 2022 and 2023, so he can become a free agent at the end of this year. So Barr is done. That gives him a lot of money. Well, enough money to now pursue hopefully an offensive lineman, but we'll see what direction they go.
I think it's about the best way to play it out. It's kind of a do or die year for everybody, including the coach. I mean, does it all feel like 2021? This is it.
And I don't know if the voidable years mean anything. It's probably just as much for cap stuff as well. But they did that for Barr, and there was one other player I can't think of off the top of my head. They did when they restructured. They did a voidable year for. And it just makes me think that if 2021 doesn't go as well as the Vikings hope it goes, that not only are we going to see Zimmer and Spielman go, but we could see a complete reshuffling of the roster. I mean, guys that we don't think would go could head on out and not be around. So, yeah, I think there's a lot riding on this year now, too.
You know, Ted, I would say he's probably the second most controversial guy besides the quarterback.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, he generates a lot of discussion. Like, there's not a lot of people that think he's worth his contract, but the Vikings defend him to the hilt, and they say, look, he does things away from the ball that you just can't really put a numerical value on. So he's going to be around. We both thought he was going to be back for 2021, and he in fact is back for 2021. So
how come Zimmer hasn't used Anthony Barr more as an edge rusher? I don't understand that, dude.
I don't either. But there was an interesting clause now that you mentioned that he's got like a big incentive based salary. I want to say it was $10 million. I'd have to go back and look at it, but it's a significant amount of money based on how many sacks he gets. So
right.
Maybe that's an indication that the Vikings are going to use him in that capacity, or Spielman's telling Zimmer under no circumstances does he rush the passer because we're not giving him that money. I don't know. I don't know.
What you gonna do, Derek? Congratulations, you're still my agent.
And folks that think the Vikings are going to have a good season have said, look, Barr's coming back healthy. Kendricks is coming back healthy. Dalvin Tomlinson's in the fold. Michael Pierce is coming back after he opted out last year. So the Vikings have a nucleus. Patrick Peterson got signed. That his contract signing was official today. There's, at least for me, there's a much better vibe about this defense as we head towards the draft than there was this time last year. So hopefully,
it's a good word.
Yeah,
Ted.
that is a good
vibe.
Yeah,
ride the vibe. It is a good vibe.
That's a better word than your mustache trimming ability,
wasn't it? What'd you call it? Stop the show. Drew's got a fang. A fang?
So with the lack of Vikings news, we got kind of backed up on some viewer questions. So Toonces has been kind enough to ask us several viewer questions, and then we'll get to our position review and then trivia. So Toonces, what do we got for some of our viewer questions tonight?
All right, our first one comes from SKOL Light on Twitter. He wants to know, how do you value the first 4 picks with need for O-line, edge, safety, linebacker, and wide receiver 3, considering there's not that many good edge or linebackers in the draft?
Drew, you're the draft expert. Why don't you? What are you?
Ted, I'm not an expert on anything.
You are.
Let's get that straight out, right out the bat.
Oh, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night.
It felt like a month ago that interior defensive line that we're doing today would be right up there at the big percentage of where we're going with this. It's a really weak class. Right now, it's got to be tackle, doesn't it? Since we don't have one. But then you take into consideration like this. He's right. There's not a lot of good linebackers. Right? Or premier guys. Mm-hmm. But what if the top linebacker hasn't been taken yet? That has to be a consideration of what the teams do in front of you. What if nobody takes Micah Parsons from Penn State? And he's sitting there at 14. First off, we want to trade back from 14, but say they're going to pick at 14. How do you pass on that guy?
My tendency is to agree with you on the Vikings' overall need. It's offensive line. Now, whether it's tackle or guard, I think we can have that debate. We've mentioned this. It sort of depends on where Ezra Cleveland goes. Until Dalvin Tomlinson was signed, I was thinking maybe defensive tackle. But I think I'm going with you. I think I'm going to go O-line, and then my personal thing, if they're going to stay at 14, I would go wide receiver 3, because I think that is going to be the most impactful player that you could get that could make the most difference. The other side of that coin is the Vikings don't use 3 wide receiver sets a lot. They like to run the ball more than anybody else. So would that be a wasted pick? So I'm probably going to settle on offensive line being the biggest pick as well.
If they're talking offensive line, that's why you're looking at a guy like Vera Tucker from USC and Slayton from Northwestern.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys play both positions, tackle and guard. And I've been hearing grumblings over the weekend, Ted, that they're leaning towards Ezra Cleveland staying at guard.
Really?
All right, that brings up our next Twitter question, actually. Rory wants to know.
Rory did!
What's wrong with you? What is wrong with you?
I'm going to murder you 1,000 times.
Okay.
Rory.
Oh, God, we're perpetually 12. I love it. Go, roll. Let's go.
Rory would like to know, what are the chances that Ezra Cleveland starts at left tackle in week 1?
I heard some grumblings over the weekend.
So put those grumblings into a percentage. 50% grumbling, 50% what?
The grumbling right now, I'm going to say 65% they want to leave him at guard. That's on the grumbling meter. Now you look at the grumblings meter, Ted, it changes every first of the month. So April 1st, the grumbling meter will be sufficiently rolled around a little bit.
Is that anything like the get off my lawn scale that I use in my life?
Get off my lawn. Did you hear me? I said get off my lawn now.
Okay, so you're hearing that. Do you think he's going to stay at guard then?
I think he is. But if they're going to leave him at guard, Ted, they're going to go tackle with the first pick. They have to. All right, next.
From Rory on Twitter, he asked, do you think Rick and Zim will attempt to fix the O-line in the draft now, or do you still think there's a possibility they bring in a couple of free agents?
Rick Spielman hasn't fixed the Vikings O-line in the draft in 10 stinking years. So that's a big no for me, dog.
Rick can't fix it.
Rick Spielman trying to fix the offensive line is like Stevie Wonder opening up a driving school.
Are you sure you're okay to drive?
My hands are on. Ready to roll. Throw your hands. Ready to run. You should probably do this too.
It just doesn't work. He's talented in many things, but not doing an O-line in the draft. He just doesn't. He can't do it. Just like Stevie Wonder can't open a driving school.
How many drafts have they had together? 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20.
That's a lot of advanced math you just used.
7 drafts, we got a center and a right guard or right tackle. So if we get, we have another 20 drafts, we'll have an offensive line ready to rock.
Next question is from Nick Howard. He wants to know, which of the big 4 QBs do you think might fall in the draft?
I don't think I'm writing of them are going to fall, but if
I'm writing my name down right here, right now, before you answer.
I think just due to the fact that he's played against lesser, I guess, competition. I really hate saying that because all competition in football is pretty good, but he did play against lesser competition and didn't play at all last year because of COVID. Just because of a bigger chance, it would have to be, in my eyes, Trey Lance would be the one that would drop further than. But that being said, I don't know who'd you have. Because you've seen what the other guys can do so much. You factor in the smaller school with the fact he didn't play last year, the uncertainty of it all. I talked to some people that say, dude, that guy's going to be better than Russell Wilson. So it's a hard balance on it because he's such a playmaker. So you have to balance out the uncertainty of what he's done up till this point to the playmaking ability. And I think that could scare people away. But I don't think any of them are going to drop. But if there's one, I would probably say him. You know, what are Viking fans going to do if Lance is there at 14? That'll be interesting.
Oh, jeez.
If you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. I will choose our path that's clear. I will choose.
That'll be wild. That'll be absolutely wild.
We will be doing all the wildness live, Ted.
Yeah, we will. Oh, I'm going to be screaming at the TV. I'm going to be an unhinged mental case.
Here's Johnny.
Let's hope for our viewers' sake that he's off the board.
Our last question from Twitter comes from Rob Nelson. You got to think about this one, okay?
All right.
A train full of all-pro cornerback prospects is traveling east at 100 miles per hour, and one full of all-pro guards is traveling west. All right, you got it?
Was it quarterbacks or cornerbacks?
Corner. The question is, how many 7th rounders does Rick get in the trade?
X equals 14. Math problems were my worst thing in school. Absolutely hated math.
You know, math is one thing. Then they made word problems out of it.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, the math word problems. Bobby has 5 apples. Susie takes 2. What's the result of that? Well, Susie ends up with 2 black eyes. That's what happens with that. Taking my stinking apples. Leave my stinking apples alone, Susie. Go get your own friggin' apples. Thank you to the viewers for bringing us your questions. I know we don't get to them every week. Sometimes we got a lot going on, but when we can, we'll get to them. And this is a really fun segment. I really enjoyed doing it. And thank you, Toonses, for reading the questions off for us and keeping us in line and keeping us on time. All right. So now we're done with the offense in our position group review. We wrapped it up last week. We are now moving to the other side of the ball. And this week we are starting off with our interior defensive linemen or defensive tackles. And before we do that, I want to throw up this draft graphic on the board. It's defensive tackles that have been drafted since 2007, since Rick Spielman became the director of player personnel or general manager. They've drafted 8 defensive tackles. 1 guy in the first round. Do you know who that is off the top of your head? Rhymes with Barif Moyd.
Sharif Floyd.
Sharif Floyd.
Surprised I got it with that hint. That was no help at all.
They've drafted 3 guys in the 4th round, 1 guy in the 5th round, 1 guy in the 6th round.
Wow.
And 2 guys in the 7th. Yeah. If you want to criticize Rick Spielman and his ability to pick talent, this is as good a position as any, almost as bad as the offensive line, at least for defensive tackle. You know, I can't really blame him for Floyd. I thought Floyd was going to be a really, really good player. He seemed to be coming along, and then he got that knee injury, but Drew.
Floyd was a tremendous value that year.
Yeah.
I had him as a top 10 overall pick.
we really wanted to talk about this and start us off. I'm not even really sure where to start with this hot mess, to be quite honest with you.
You know, if we're look at the guys on the team right now. Who's going to start at defensive tackle next year?
Well, it's going to have to be Dalvin Tomlinson and Michael Pierce.
Were they drafted here?
They were not. Free agent acquisitions.
Because you can't draft right. Because you can't find the right guys yourself. You have to go out and get these. And that's what, look at Rick Spielman. What a stroke of genius getting Michael Pierce. Well, you know, I could have went out and got him, Ted. I mean, It's easy once he's already played with the Ravens and shredded over there. Oh, yeah, look what I did. Look at the guy I brought in here. You know, it just didn't, they don't work.
The 3 4th-round guys, Christian Ballard, Jaleel Johnson, and James Lynch. Shoot, James Lynch, in his defense, just very limited amount of snaps. He looked okay last year. He might be something.
He can't be accountable for that. And that guy I think that guy's going to end up being a good player. So the jury's still out on him.
Yeah.
But
so we can't throw him out with the rest of this bathwater just yet. We've talked about Jaleel Johnson 2-3 years now. We're both done with him, and he's free agent. He's not coming back. Christian Ballard as he was a guy that I thought was going to be pretty good, and then he just decided after 1 year he didn't like football and quit.
Come on.
Like, is that not part of your scouting process? It's a serious question. I mean, it's a serious question. But, you know, last week we talked about this. You know, there's guys that they just don't have a passion for the game, and it's just a job, and it becomes a grind. And okay, I get that, but man, that was just a huge whiff on a guy out of Iowa I thought was going to be a pretty good football player.
Yeah, it is part of the process. Like Jerry Burns says, I can get guys who want to play football or get guys who can play football. I want to get guys who want to play football. I don't know. I guess you could chalk up an excuse for everybody that goes by the wayside, but the draft hasn't been pleasant to Rick Spielman in terms of the interior defensive line. It could have gone a lot better.
Armand Watts is still on the team, and I think he's got potential to be a decent rotational depth guy. We'll see. And then the 2 7th-rounders, Shamar Stephen and Everett Dawkins. I mean, Stephen for a 7th-rounder, I would argue they got more value out of him than just about anybody, but still wasn't anything to write home about. I mean, if you're drafting guys in the 7th round and they become starters, a lot of people missed a lot of things in their personnel evaluation, or you don't have anybody else you can play. But Stephen was bad enough that they had to let him go, and they signed the free agent this offseason in Dalvin Tomlinson. Now, like you mentioned, they've had a pretty good track record in signing free agents. We mentioned Tomlinson, we mentioned Pierce. Linval Joseph was just another beast that the Vikings had for several years.
Didn't draft him either.
I mean, so yeah. So the reason the Vikings have done so well at free agent signings is because they've been just as bad at drafting and developing defensive tackles.
How does that sit financially, though, Ted?
Free
agents are more than rookies. I mean, rookies in there playing, they're on a rookie deal, right? If you sign a free agent, you're paying more. I don't know.
Their 2 starting defensive tackles are significant cap hits this year in both Pierce and Tomlinson. So yeah, that's a big chunk of change going to one position. Again, it just goes back to the Vikings' inability to draft and develop at that position, which kind of leads us to this position group.
So if one of those guys go down, who's the backup? What do we got for the roster? What's it look like?
Besides Dalvin Tomlinson and Michael Pierce, we got James Lynch, who we talked about a little bit, and Armand Watts are your 4 interior defensive linemen.
That's it?
That's it right now. Now, I will say those 4 seem a little bit better from top to bottom than what the Vikings had last year.
Hopefully those guys can stay healthy, those starters. I do like Pierce, the combo of Pierce and Tomlinson. I really like that. I think that's going to pay big dividends, Ted.
Looking at the available free agent list, is there anybody out there that you think might be worth taking a flyer on?
I know there's been talk about Geno Atkins.
Oh, God, Geno Atkins.
Not big about Geno Atkins, man. Like I said, I'd rather have Chet Atkins.
Kawan Short?
You know what? I saw Kawan Short on there, the guy from Carolina. He's 32, but I like his game, dude. That guy has solid anchor, and he's tough inside. He's a very physical player. The guy I saw in here that I like, and I don't know if he's a bust. I know he's in Cleveland, I think, before Detroit how about Danny Shelton? He's only 28.
Yeah.
He seems like he hasn't done what he was supposed to. I mean, that guy was pretty dominant coming out of college. I don't know if some guys just don't get it, or some guys get it later in their career, and some guys don't get it at all. Taylor Stallworth from the Colts. He's only 26. Got a pretty good game. If they signed Tomlinson as a free agent defensive tackle, are they going to sign another one?
I would say no, just off the top of my head. And looking at the roster now, I kind of like where they're sitting at depth wise, at least compared to last year. I think it would be maybe an undrafted free agent or a late round draft pick to throw in there. I don't know what they're going to do, but I don't think a top line signing like Geno Atkins is something that's in the works. But now watch, right after we get off here tonight, with all this extra cap space, that's exactly who the Vikings end up signing. Who knows?
One of the rules you always have with me, I always like to go get younger on the team rather than, since they signed Tomlinson as a free agent, I don't think they're going to go after another one. I think they're going to do exactly what you said. Maybe if they could what about Jarrell Casey from Denver? He's a pretty good player.
Yeah, he's not bad.
I think he's just a nose tackle though, right? I don't know.
I think you're right. I'd have to go back and double.
And Ndamukong Suh is on here?
That was the guy. That was the name I was going to bring up. Yeah, Ndamukong Suh. That guy, he's what, 34?
34 years old. I thought he was going back to Tampa to win another Super Bowl.
I think that is his plan, but they haven't signed him back yet.
The only other name on there, Antoine Woods from Dallas. I don't know much about him, but I've heard stories that he's a pretty good. I don't know what they're going to do. Defensive tackle.
Before the Tomlinson signing, defensive tackle was a position the Vikings were looking at, and I think it still might be. I mean, they still need depth, and they still need long-term answers. So let's get to your defensive tackle big board for 2021, Brewster, because it's kind of controversial, I think, when you see these names pop up here.
Oh, yeah, here we go.
Let's go.
Stop the presses. Stop the madness. Drew doesn't have Christian Barr. Barmore is number one.
Now, I'm telling you right now, prepare to defend yourself, because people are going to lose their mind when they see Christian Barmore is not the number one overall defensive tackle.
Gentlemen, prepare to defend yourselves.
Well, I'm going to do my damnedest to try to explain it all. I did the research on these guys, and I'm going to present it to you just like how I see it.
Okay.
We'll start with Barmore and go up.
All right.
But I kind of lost the battle on this because my number one guy is a guy from Iowa. We just talked about Ballard and Jaleel Johnson, so I might be losing my argument a little early. Christian Barmore, pure 3 technique, Ted. Super explosive, super athletic. This guy has a really rare combination of power and strength. We talked about Alan Page earlier. He's not Alan Page yet, but when you have that combination, that rare combo, you have a chance to be something special in the NFL. The guy's a great football player. Don't get me wrong. Great football player. You want a pure 3 technique that's going to thrive and get to the quarterback. It's Barmore. I do like his game. He has a lot of upside. He's only played 22 games. It seemed to come on the last 2 games of last year is when he really shredded. A lot of times would take over the line of scrimmage. He's that good. The one thing that kind of bothers me about his game, here's the deal. He's super quick with the first snap, but when he doesn't win with quickness, more often than not, he can't get off the blocker. He can't.
Now, is that because of his technique, or he just doesn't have the physical strength to move off a blocker and make a play?
I think it's maybe a combination of both. He doesn't seem to have any secondary moves. Once the quickness thing doesn't work, he gets locked on. It's very inconsistent. He makes such big splash plays in the backfield by tackles for loss and sacking the quarterback. He had 8 sacks and 9.5 tackles for loss and 8 sacks last year, which is really good for a defensive tackle. Those splash plays, you remember those a lot more than when you're getting mushed out of the play in the mush, when you're not being effective in the run game. He's not that effective in the run game. He's inconsistent.
And is that why you dropped him down to 3rd?
That's why I dropped him down to 3rd. Now that's my board. Now let me tell you, he's going to be the first defensive tackle taken.
Okay.
He is going to be the first one taken, but that doesn't necessarily always jive with my board and how I see it.
Will his quickness translate to the NFL, or will that something that, or is that something that can be a lot more easily negated in the NFL?
No, his quickness is going to be what he carries him.
Okay.
And if he can figure out how to shed blocks better, or maybe come up with some secondary moves, he's going to be Henry Thomas. I'm telling you.
Really? That's high praise.
He's got, just because he's 3rd on my list doesn't mean, first off, I'm a base player. I'm not a professional football scout. I just, he's going to be a great player. I just see some inconsistency and it scares me a little bit. I don't know. Just because he's number 3rd doesn't mean he's not going to be a Pro Bowler.
Okay. Well, let's talk about, who do you want to talk about next then? You want to talk about the kid from Washington or the kid from
Levi? Go ahead. Spell his name, Ted, without looking. No, you don't look.
Oh, I can't do it. I can't pronounce it without looking. You pronounce it. I can't.
Onwuzurike.
Onwuzurike. Levi Onwuzurike.
This guy is really good against the run. He's the three technique that's the run stuffer. Barmore is the three technique that's going to rush the shit out of your passer. That's the difference of these two players. He only had 7 sacks his entire time at Washington. So he's going to need to work on that or he may get washed out. But the guy's super athletic. He's a great run defender on the inside. He had 34 starts at Washington. He could have came out in the draft last year and been a high 2nd round pick. But after 34 starts, he'd already proven himself. He opted to go back to Washington and play. And then he had to opt out because then the COVID thing hit and ruined his plan to return to college because he thought he could get even higher up in the draft, which, I mean, I still have him as maybe a late 1st round guy, early 2nd, but 34 starts. So he could have had 47 career starts. He's a very experienced guy, really quick off the snap too. But unlike Barmore, Levi could shed the blocks. He's really good at shedding when he needs to get off the blocks. And even when he needs to eat up the blocks so the linebackers can get there, he's a very smart player. He's only 290 pounds. People say he has to bulk up a little more, but he is a great run stuffer. He had 16 tackles for loss at Washington. Really good moving side to side. And another thing I like about him is his chase speed, running people down laterally. He could run backs down and some quarterbacks when they get out of the pocket. He has good speed away from the ball. I have his number 2 just because he's more of a run stuffer.
Better run stuffer, not as quick as Barmore, though.
Not as quick. Plus, he turned down Michigan the last week coming out of high school. He turned down Michigan to play for Washington.
Smartest decision of his life. So he should be number 1 unquestionably on your board then.
I remember when that happened. The Wolverines lost a player. Who was it? I don't know. Some woozy K guy. But he's really good.
Well, let's talk about Davion Nixon then.
Let's talk about Davion Nixon. He is my number 1 on the board. I'm probably the only guy in America that has him number 1 on the board. And I'm good with that. Iowa, like I said, we don't want to talk about Ballard. We certainly don't want to talk about Jaleel Johnson, but he's his own player. Pure 3 technique. He's also the gap penetrator, quick off the ball, can get to the quarterback, but he's also a run stuffing player. He can stuff the run. He doesn't get locked up in the mush. Okay, here's how to break it down. Barmore's your 3 technique gets to the quarterback. Onwuzurike is more your run stopper that can't get to the quarterback.
Okay.
Nixon's a good combination of both.
But not as good at either as those two guys are at their particular strength.
Yeah, to make this real simplified, that's why he's number 1, because to me, he's more of a complete player.
Okay.
He's more consistent than
that
both
makes
those
sense.
guys.
That makes a lot of sense, though.
And that's kind of why I put him there. Very, very speedy guy. And here's another reason. He only had 21 starts, which is less than the other 2 guys we just talked about, and he had better stats.
Did he really?
More sacks and more tackles for loss. 19 tackles for loss in 21 games. I love Davion Nixon. 6'3", 305. And here's a little tidbit story. This guy came to Iowa, but academically he couldn't qualify. And in the process of not qualifying academically, they figured out he had a learning disability. So he was bummed and he told Iowa, this sucks. And they said, well, you know what? We're going to hold your scholarship for you. Because he said, I'm going to go play junior college for a couple of years.
Wow.
He went to junior college, worked on his learning disability, got that squared away, and became a dynamic football player in that time. Matter of fact, Nick Saban was sitting on his porch almost every day trying to get that guy to come to Alabama because Nick Saban knows how good he is. He blew up. Saban wanted him, come to Alabama. That's where all the good players go. And you know what he did? He honored Iowa by saying, you know what? They were cool enough to wait for me. So I'm going to go play there.
That says a lot about that guy's character.
Doesn't it? Doesn't it, Ted Glover?
It does,
and You know what? Character means something.